Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly wildcard draft for Game Week 27. We are getting into the part of the season where we need to plan for future game weeks now, with Game Week 29 being a blank game week, Game Week 32 being a small double game week, and then Game Week 33 being a pretty big double game week before we get another blank game week in Game Week 34. So with this wildcard draft, assuming we are now wildcarding in Game Week 27, if you are wildcarding in Game Week 27, I think the best course of action for you is to make a team that is good enough to start 11 players in Game Week 29 so you can save your free hit for 34. And the main reason for that is the fact that you have several teams doubling in Game Week 33, and all of those teams that are doubling in Game Week 33 are likely to blank in Game Week 34 the following game week, so you need an exit plan. And if you don't wildcard now, if you're saving the wildcard, you could wildcard in Game Week 34 and get out of it that way. And completely change the team that has been doubling for you in Game Week 33. But if you are wildcarding now, you don't have that option. So you need to save your free hit for 34, which means that you can't use it in 29. So with this wildcard draft in mind, we're going to have enough players to field an 11-man squad in Game Week 29 and basically go from there. So yeah, if you're new to this channel, the weekly wildcard draft is a series that I do every single game week where I try to select what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next few game weeks. And I do it in the style of an NBA or NFL type of draft, where the number one player, the number one pick that I choose is the player that I think is the most important player to have in Fantasy Premier League currently. And then the 15th player that I select for my squad is the player that made it barely into the squad, basically. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to look at the players that have dropped out since last time. Since I do this every week, I can compare it to the draft that I had for Game Week 26. And then finally, we're going to look at the 3 players that were close to making it, the on-the-cusp players that almost made it into the squad, but for some reason or another didn't in the end. So let's start with the number one pick, as we usually do, and that is going to be Mohamed Salah, or as we always do. And it's pretty much always also Salah, because Salah is just absolutely amazing. Like, he is by far the best FPL asset this season. Like, it's not even close. And that's still going to be the case, even though he blanks in Game Week 29. We need him for both the games before and after. Doesn't really matter that he doesn't double in 33. He's still going to be an amazing player to have and the main captaincy choice pretty much every game week. At least for me, I've decided that whenever there's a game week where Salah has the same amount of fixtures as the best player in terms of having amount of fixtures, I'm going to choose Salah. So unless it's like a blank game week for Salah or it's a double game week for someone else, I'm going to captain Salah, and that's why he's so important to have in FPL, because he is just a guarantee for points at this point, because he has just been amazing, and he's going to break the record for most FPL points. He's going to break the record for most goals and assists in a Premier League season in total. Like, he's just amazing, and the fixtures now as well aren't the worst either, with 3 home games in the next 4. Obviously, Game Week 29 being a blank, but you could just bench him for that game week and have a pretty strong 11 anyways. So Salah is, again, a no-brainer at number 1. I don't really need to go more into it because I say this every single week. He is absolutely fantastic, and I love him, and he is the greatest FPL player of all time, basically. So there's that for Salah at number 1. Number 2, we still have Cole Palmer, and that's basically down to the fixtures because Palmer has not been as good lately in terms of getting the points. Even last game against Aston Villa didn't really look that threatening, but just the good fixtures that they have. So Southampton at home, Leicester at home, and also Spurs at home in Game Week 30 as well are 3 really nice fixtures, especially the next 2 for Palmer. So especially for this game week and also the next, he's going to be a pretty important player to have. But after that, I can sort of see the reasoning for selling him potentially, but we'll get into that later when we get to those game weeks, basically. But yeah, Southampton and Leicester at home, fantastic game weeks. I'm not going to captain them. I'm going to captain Salah in both those game weeks anyway. But even still, I think Palmer is just a really nice safeguard to have for those 2 game weeks, and then you can decide after that what you want to do with him, basically. So yeah, we know how good he is, or has been for Chelsea at least. Chelsea aren't in the best form, but against Southampton and Leicester, form doesn't really matter because you can just destroy those teams regardless, because they are really, really bad teams. So Palmer is just super important to have for that reason. So he comes in at number 2. He's also the penalty taker and all that stuff for Chelsea. And most likely, if Chelsea score, he's the likely player to score from them, even though lately that hasn't really been the case because he has been struggling a bit alongside the Chelsea team. But yeah, Palmer is still a really important player to have in FPL, and I don't think this is the time to sell him right before those 2 fantastic fixtures against Southampton and Leicester, which we all dream about having basically in our squads. So yeah, let's move on to number 3, which is going to be Alexander Isak, as also pretty much always. Isak has been in great form. You saw that last game week, scoring twice against Nottingham Forest. He's just too good to be denied. He is underpriced for what he should be. He's going to be like around like 11 million, I'm guessing, next season, because he is just really fantastic. He's one of the best players in the Premier League. Liverpool away isn't ideal, but he has been pretty good against Liverpool in the past. Then he has West Ham away. He has been really good against West Ham in the past, so I think he can do really well in that game. And then, especially after Game Week 29, we can bench him for Game Week 29, and then after that, Game Week 30, 31, 32, 33. Absolutely fantastic, and is vital to have as many Newcastle players as possible, especially for Game Week 32 and 33, which are going to be double game weeks most likely for Newcastle. Game Week 32, we know is a confirmed double game week, and Game Week 33, it's very likely that they get a double game week. So Isak as the most important Newcastle player, I think is just really important to have as well, especially considering his form and how good he has looked, especially now against Nottingham Forest after 2 blanks before that. So Isak still super relevant in FPL. No reason to sell him, even though there are a lot of good striker options coming up, especially post Game Week 29, or from Game Week 29 onwards as well. There's going to be a lot of good options, but Isak for me is still the standout striker option because he's just been so good, and Newcastle have those really, really, really good fixtures. Even starting next week, Game Week 28, he's going to look really good in terms of fixtures, apart from that blank in 29, where we could just bench him as always. Doesn't really matter, so Isak easily in the squad still at number 3. Number 4, we have Matheus Cunha. He has also been in really fine form lately, and the fixtures are really picking up. 2 home games coming up against Fulham and Everton, 2 teams that have been pretty tough to beat at certain points this season at least. Everton more so recently, Fulham more so previously in the season. But I think Cunha has a chance to score in both these games, because Cunha scores a lot of goals. He's on penalties, he's on set pieces and stuff. He also has fantastic fixtures after that, and the main reason to have Cunha is the fact that he plays Southampton in Game Week 29, the best fixture in Game Week 29, and the player to target for that game week, whether you're on a free hit or not. It seems like a really good place to target Cunha, because he's going to have a really nice time against Southampton most likely. So yeah, Cunha number 4 for that reason. He's just a talisman for Wolves and has been really good since the fixtures have turned better for Wolverhampton lately, or even in the worst fixtures. Like, he scored against Bournemouth and Liverpool. He could easily score against Fulham, Everton, and West Ham and the likes of those teams. So yeah, I think he's just a really nice player to have. And he was also in the squad last time around at number 9. He's bumped up significantly since then, because he is now finished with the tough fixtures against Bournemouth away, which I thought was going to be a really, really tough fixture. But he scored, got 9 points, as he usually does, because he always gets the bonus points, it seems like, when he scores. And that's why he's such a good asset, and was such a good asset earlier in the season as well, when the fixtures were good. So now that the fixtures are back again for Cunha, it's a pretty easy choice for me, and he comes in at number 4. Number 5, we have Daniel Muñoz from Crystal Palace, and that means we have our 3rd player that blanks in 29, our 3rd and almost final player. I have another player that I barely included that also blanks in 29, but one player is manageable, because you just use one transfer in Game 29 and get basically a full squad of 11 players still, so I don't really worry too much about that game week. But for Muñoz, he's in terrific form. Palace are in really good form, just beat Fulham 2-0 away. Now they have 2 pretty nice home fixtures, one against Aston Villa, which is kind of tough, but then at home against Ipswich, which is really nice. And then Southampton away in Game Week 30 as well, which is looking absolutely fantastic as well. So both the game week before and after Game Week 29, it's looking really, really good for Crystal Palace. So I think Muñoz in his current form at a really low price, I think he's still the best defender to have currently for those game weeks. And even beyond that as well, they have a double game week in 32, I think, or at least 33. So Palace are looking really nice. At 32, they have a double game week confirmed already, even though it is a pretty tough game week away to City and Newcastle. It's still a double game week, and Muñoz can get both attacking returns and clean sheets. That's the good thing about Muñoz, and Palace basically as well. Can get clean sheets against the tougher teams, and he can score against pretty much anyone as well, because he's playing so offensively minded. So yeah, Muñoz still a really good player to have. Was number 10 last time around, and he's gone up a little bit because he scored a goal, obviously got a huge haul this past game week and looked once again really lethal, and Palace looked even better than I expected them to be, so he's jumped a bit in the standings up to number 5. Number 6, we have Jared Bowen, who's new. You can see that his name is in green, which means that he's a new player. He's the first new player in the squad out of the first 6 players selected here, but not the last one, because there's going to be quite a few changes for the rest of the team compared to the Game Week 26 draft that I did. But yeah, Bowen, the main thing about him, he now went through Arsenal away and scored a goal, got 10 points in that game, which is considered a tough game. Now he has Leicester at home, which is considered one of the easiest games of all time in FPL, basically, because Leicester have been awful lately. West Ham did lose against Leicester previously in the season, but back then Bowen and West Ham had several chances. They really should have won that game. Bowen was really unlucky not to haul in that game, I think. So I think he's going to avenge himself now, especially seeing as he is in such good form, and West Ham are looking a lot better now under Graham Potter, especially this past game against Arsenal. Defensively solid, and offensively, there's just enough talent to beat the likes of Leicester pretty handedly. And I think Bowen is going to be the main beneficiary for that, and for that reason, he's number 6. I also think he's going to be on penalties currently at West Ham since Paqueta is out with injuries. It could be Ward-Prowse, but I'm currently leaning towards Bowen. I would be like 60-40% in favor of Bowen being the penalty taker over Ward-Prowse, but I'm not completely sure. So that would be a nice bonus anyway. But even without penalties, I think Bowen is going to be a really nice option, not just for the Leicester game, but after that as well. Newcastle, a team that West Ham beat earlier in the season, away at St. James's Park, and we know at home or Newcastle away from home aren't that good either. So I think that could also be a good game for Bowen. Then Everton in the blank game week in game 29 is a decent fixture. And then Wolverhampton after that, where Bowen has had some really nice games in the past. So yeah, quite like the fixtures for Bowen, especially the Leicester fixture. That's why he's so high in the standings. After the Leicester fixture, especially if he blanks, he might struggle a bit more to be in the wildcard squad, but he still has really good fixtures for the long foreseeable future. I think West Ham have a pretty easy schedule towards the end of the season in general, so I think Bowen is going to be a really nice player to have in FPL, and that's why he's at number 6. Number 7, we have another player that was in last week's draft, and that is Marmoush from City. He did blank against Liverpool, even though he had a goal disallowed for offside, I think it was. But he's showing some promise, and I think once the fixtures turn really nicely for Manchester City, starting from game 29, which is also the blank game week where we need really good players, I think Marmoush is going to be the way to go. I do prefer him over Haaland, actually, because yes, Haaland will be the better captaincy option in game 29. But after that, like I said, I'm planning to captain Salah in most game weeks anyway. Even game week 30, when Salah has Everton at home and City have Leicester at home, I would still captain Salah over Haaland in that game week. So saving 7 million then on having Marmoush rather than Haaland, I think is worth it. Marmoush is also on set pieces. He's also on corners. And he's just a really good player. Sorry for my voice breaking up today. It's early morning and I haven't really properly warmed up, I guess, with my voice. But anyways, that's beside the point. Marmoush is looking really good in terms of FPL. An FPL asset. He has played every single game so far in the league. Played 70 plus minutes as well, even though he does keep getting subbed off. I think he's going to be a really nice asset to have, especially once City's fixtures turn better in the next upcoming game weeks. Even now as well, Spurs away, really good fixture. I had him in the free hit draft for this game week, so I think he's really good for this game week as well. Nottingham Forest away. We saw what City did against Nottingham Forest the last time. They beat them 3-0, so I think that game could suit them pretty well as well. So I think, in general, Marmoush has really good fixtures, and I think he's going to explode at some point. And I think the price tag that he's at currently, like 7.0, I don't think we're going to get him at that lower price next season. I think he's going to be more like 8 or 9, because I think he's going to provide the goods towards the end of the season this year. And that's why I also think it's important to have him now, because I think he's going to be a really good player, because we know the quality of Marmoush. Everyone that has seen him in the Bundesliga, even if you've just seen his numbers, like he's been absolutely fantastic. I know there's been some bad Bundesliga to Premier League transitions before, but Marmoush has already shown in the Premier League that he has what it takes to be a star in this league as well. So yeah, he comes in at number 7. Number 8, we have Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth, who has really good fixtures, and he is also marked in green. He's a new player, but he is also replacing a different Bournemouth player in Milos Kerkez. And that's basically down to me just looking at the numbers since Huijsen came into the team in around game week 14. He has just outscored Kerkez and had better underlying numbers than Kerkez. So why wouldn't I have Huijsen for the cheaper price? Like I think it just makes sense. I have sort of been enamored by Kerkez being the more offensive attacking player in general in open play, but Huijsen is also a better set piece threat as well for Bournemouth. So, and also a much better bonus candidate as well, or at least baseline bonus. He's a lot better than Kerkez. So I think I just prefer Huijsen, especially for the price, considering we need probably all the money that we can have later on in the season, especially if you're looking to bring in Haaland at some point. You want to save money wherever you can. So I think Huijsen is just a better choice than Kerkez. When it comes to having a Bournemouth defender in general, yes, they have conceded twice in a row now, like 2 game weeks in a row. They're not the best team defensively, but they are still a really good team that can keep clean sheets. We've seen that in the past. Huijsen is one of the highest scoring defenders as well since he came into the squad in game week 14. With the fixtures that Bournemouth have, the double in game week 33 and not blanking in game week 29, I think it's just important to have some Bournemouth assets, and I think Huijsen is the best out of them, because you can see he's the first Bournemouth player here. And there's a bit of a reason for that, which I'm going to go into later on when it comes to the rest of the Bournemouth assets. But Huijsen, really good defender. He's been world-class this season as well. Also has to be taken into account. I don't think his place is under threat, even with Senesi and Sabarni back fully healthy and not suspended. Huijsen is the starting centre-back now for Bournemouth, and he is really good at it and can score some goals as well from set pieces, as we've seen in the past. So he comes in at number 8. Number 9, we have another new player. That's Patrick Dorgu from Manchester United and Denmark. He has played 2 games in the Premier League now, 90 minutes in both of them at left wing back. He's the only proper left wing back at Man United to suit Amorim's system. He's also the one signing that Amorim has made as well. And he's looked really, really good. Against Everton, he looked really impressive. Played 90 minutes, was super attacking, was really involved in offensive play. Also, the fixtures are absolutely amazing for Man United in terms of this game week against Ipswich, game week 29 against Leicester, and then having a double in game week 33. And for the rest of the game weeks, you can just bench Dorgu because he's only 4.5. He's really cheap asset. He's not really worth that much in terms of the price. So he's easy to bench, easy to start in the really good game weeks that he has against Ipswich, Leicester, and in game week 33. And he's looking really promising as well as the only left wing back, like I said, at Man United. So I think he's the best Man United cover currently. Maybe you don't need cover from Man United considering they have been really bad lately, but they have shown in the past they can keep clean sheets at least. And Dorgu is looking like a pretty good offensive threat as well. And that's what I like for my defenders. Someone that can both provide offensive goods and be potentially a clean sheet asset as well, which I think Dorgu could be in those easier games that Man United have at least. So yeah, Dorgu, just think he's a really nice bench holder option and someone that you can use for game week 29 and 33 specifically, which are really important game weeks as a blank and a double game week where Dorgu plays in both of them. He has a blank game week 29 fixture and he has 2 fixtures. Most likely, we still don't know yet completely in 33, but there's a good chance that they get a game week 33 fixture, double game week there as well. So Dorgu for me seems like a pretty easy choice. He's also really cheap. Could also easily be sold to a different player if he doesn't work out. If Man United doesn't get a double game week game 33, you could easily move ahead to a different player as well. Someone like Ait-Nouri, for example, or Lewis Hall, which we'll get more into as well later in the video. So Dorgu, really, and what's the word I'm looking for? Enthused? Not that, but I've been enticed by what I've seen so far with Dorgu. And I think he's going to be a really nice player to have and a really nice utility player to have in the squad as well. So he comes in at number 9. Number 10, we have Justin Kluivert, who has a higher ceiling, obviously, than Dorgu, for example, but he also has a lower floor now, especially with Evan Nilsson coming back. One of the main drawing points to Kluivert was the fact that he has been playing sort of as a number 9-ish, close to it, since Evan Nilsson got injured and Anderson all got injured as well. But now that Evan Nilsson is going to come back pretty soon, Kluivert isn't quite as important to have, or he might not have as good of a role in the Bournemouth team anymore. Also, the fact that Bournemouth have been a bit lackluster the last 2 game weeks. Kluivert as well has been sort of like a really hot and cold asset this whole season. He has some really super high scoring game weeks and he has some really low scoring game weeks. And I had that in the past this season with Ismail Assar, who just blanked all the time for me. Kind of the same with Joao Pedro as well, who has blanked all the time for me as well. So I don't really have the best memories from those types of players. But I think Kluivert is still a really good player. I think he's going to be still playing 70 plus minutes like he usually does for Bournemouth, even with Evan Nilsson back in the squad. But yeah, his appeal isn't quite as high as it was last week when I had him as number 4, but it's still pretty high because he's still the penalty taker. Evan Nilsson is still not ready for the game against Brighton, which is a team that concedes a lot of penalties. So I think he could still be good in that game week, but it's also the fact that I might have to bench him that game week with this draft because there are just so many good attacking players currently in midfield and attack. So yeah, a bit uneasy about this midfield spot. But I think Kluivert is still a really good player to have. He could still play in that same role and take penalties and be that good of an asset that I thought he was in Game Week 26 or before Game Week 26. Before it looked like Evan Nilsson was going to come back, before we knew Evan Nilsson was going to come back pretty soon. But yeah, I still like Kluivert, but I'm not completely sure about him. So he comes in at number 10, but he still has really good fixtures. He has the blank game week 29 fixture. He has the double in 33. So I think we just need another Bournemouth asset because I think they have the best fixtures, or I know they have the best fixtures for the next 6 or 7 game weeks. So yeah, Kluivert has to be added in my opinion, but it is kind of out there because yeah, not really quite as sure about his value as we were last week when he had him at number 4, but he's number 10 this time around. Number 11, we have another fantastic midfielder for the current, at least, in Fantasy Premier League in Neto, and that's down to the fixtures in Game Week 27 and Game Week 28 against Southampton and Leicester at home. And also the fact that Neto played as a striker and had really nice underlying numbers this past game week. The only worry that I have is the fact that they lost that game and Neto might not be played in that same role. Maybe Maresca wants to change it up, so maybe he won't get to play in that same role going forward. So I'm not quite sure about his value going forward, but if he's going to be the striker in the place of Nicholas Jackson, who's still out for quite a while, then he's going to be tremendous value, especially in the next 2 game weeks. So I think it's worth the punt, but it is also just a punt. That's why I have him at number 11, because I'm not quite sure that he's going to play in that same role in those really good fixtures. But for now, it seems like he's going to do that. I think Maresca will give him more than just 1 game, but he did get an assist after all. It was more the defensive side of the things and the midfield that was the issue with Chelsea, not really the attack, I think, potentially. So yeah, I think Neto will probably continue to play. It doesn't seem like Nkunku is favored that much by the manager, Maresca. After all, he played on the left wing, didn't really do much, got subbed off. So yeah, I think that they will still play in that role and have really good fixtures, and that's why he's in. But there are some uncertainties both with him and with Chelsea, so that's why he is like on the edge at least. Like he's number 11 for that reason. I'm not too confident in him, but I think he has really, really high upside. If he's placed as a striker against Southampton Leicester for Chelsea, that's a really good player to have. So yeah, I don't feel too good about having him, and I feel even worse not having him, because I think he has just really high upside the next 2 game weeks especially. So let's see what happens in those 2 game weeks for Neto. Number 12, we have Dean Henderson in goal. I think he is my favorite goalkeeper, especially seeing that he kept a clean sheet away to Fulham. And now Aston Villa at home, Ipswich at home, Southampton away in 3 out of the next 4 game weeks. He does blank in game week 29, but we do have a backup goalkeeper for that instance, which is going to serve us nicely. Henderson also really cheap. He's like 4.5 or 4.6, I think, at this point. So he's also one of the cheaper goalkeepers, and there's not many cheap goalkeepers left. It's basically Henderson, Flecken, and then a couple cheaper assets, one of them being the backup goalkeeper that we're going to talk about as well in this video. But yeah, Palace looking good. The fixtures are looking good, especially considering they are most likely, or they are going to have a double game week in 32 as well, where we were going to have Henderson. And we can cover him in the blank game week with a pretty cheap backup goalkeeper as well. Now Henderson. So yeah, not feeling too good about any goalkeepers really. I don't think there's any like huge standouts. That's why they are going to be featured towards the end of these wildcard videos, because I'm not going to draft them that highly, because yeah, I'm not really too enthused about any goalkeeper. But Henderson is looking the best out of the lot for me currently, and that's why he's number 12 basically in this squad. Number 13, we have Ait-Nouri, who I did mention previously in this video as well, as a decent option to have in defense. And obviously I think so, because he's included in the squad at number 13. Have had some like bad experiences with him in the past this season. I did bring him in like too late. He had some really good game weeks, and then I brought him in, and then after that he started blanking. But we know that high potential Ait-Nouri playing pretty offensively for almost like Crystal Palace, for Wolverhampton. Wolverhampton getting a lot better fixtures going forward as well, so clean sheets and attacking returns are potential there for Ait-Nouri, who's a pretty cheap player to have as well. So for all those reasons, I want to have him in the squad, especially for game 29 when he plays Southampton. It's nice to just have him and not have to buy him for that game week. So yeah, he's a nice player to have, especially with also the good fixtures around that as well. Fulham at home, Everton at home, West Ham at home. I would not be surprised to see him get some returns in 1 or 2 of those games, especially. So yeah, not super enthralled by Ait-Nouri. That's why he's number 13. Again, I'm going to say that about the players towards the latter half of this draft. But I think the offensive potential that he has, the potential to get clean sheet as well, and also just the good fixtures is going to go in his favor. And the Game 29 fixture against Southampton is the main selling point here for Ait-Nouri. Someone you can keep. You could even sell him after Game 29. You can sell him for the likes of Lewis Hall, for example, who's going to be really nice from Game 29 onwards. But I want to have him for Game 29, especially Ait-Nouri, so that's why he's in the squad at number 13. Number 14, we have Trent Alexander-Arnold, a 4th outfield player that has a blank in Game 29. But again, he's also someone you can sell in that game week, or you can sell Muñoz, for example, as well, or maybe Salah or Isak, depending on what happens if they get injured, for example. But the main thing with Trent is just having him for the Southampton game. I also think he is one of the best defenders to have for this game week against Newcastle. I think he's going to keep a clean sheet. He has the attacking potential. He's also been subbed off right after 60 minutes lately as well. But now Conor Bradley has actually been injured. He's out for a couple of weeks. So it seems like Trent is going to play 90 minutes. But again, that's not the worst thing in the world either. He can get some assists after that. or potentially goals as well in those minutes. So yeah, I think it's just a really good asset for the next 2 game weeks. Could potentially keep him longer than that as well, because Liverpool have some pretty good fixtures after game week 29 as well, but they are going to blank in 29, so that's when you need to sell him. But I also don't really mind having an expensive player that I know I'm going to sell, because that means more money in the bank, more flexibility for future game weeks. In case Haaland looks absolutely amazing and you need him for game week 29 or game week 30 onwards, you could sell Trent and get someone really cheap in his place, and not be like bound up by someone like Guardiola, for example, that you don't want to sell. You can have a player that you can sell and that has really good fixtures before that. So yeah, Trent makes it barely because he is going to blank in 29, and it is most likely going to be the player that I'm going to sell, or if I did this draft right now with a wildcard, would be the player that I would sell in game week 29. So it would be nice to sort of like save that transfer, but at the same time, I think he can gain those points back in the fixtures at home to Newcastle and Southampton in the next 2. I think Liverpool are looking likely, or looking probably trying to look forward to sealing the deal when it comes to the league title as quickly as possible. So especially with Conor Bradley out the next 2 games, he's going to play both those 2 games, and then after that you can sell him and get a lot of extra cash for him. So yeah, I quite like Trent, but obviously as a player that I'm going to sell at some point, he's not going to be as valuable because he's not going to be long-term in the squad. So yeah, that's why it's number 14. Then finally, number 15, it is going to be Alphonse Areola in goal for West Ham. He is really cheap. He has that Leicester game now. He has a fixture in game week 29, which covers Henderson. He also has a pretty good fixture in game week 33, or even game week 34. I think he also has like a decent fixture in case you need covered there as well. So he's just like a really nice coverage player as your backup goalkeeper, basically. But it is West Ham. They did keep a clean sheet against Arsenal, but Arsenal haven't been the best offensively this season, especially lately with so many injuries that they have. So who knows if West Ham are actually good defensively now. They looked a lot more solid in that game against Arsenal. That could continue, but also against like a lesser team, they could push on more forward and sort of leave their backline more exposed, because they have like Cresswell in the backline. Like that's not ideal. So yeah, not too confident in West Ham keeping clean sheets, but I do think Areola for his price is really nice to have. So I have him at number 15, but obviously as a backup goalkeeper, he's not that important. You can have different goalkeepers. Jose Sa is another example who could be just as good or not, or if not better in that position than Areola. So yeah, he's not really super valuable to have, but he is a nice player to have for both this game week 29, and potentially beyond that as well, with West Ham having pretty good fixtures for the end of the season. So yeah, he comes in at number 15. And as you can see, a lot of green names here, a lot of new names towards the back end of the drafts, especially 8 players in total that are new. That means that 8 players have dropped out since last time around as well. So let's take a look at those 8 players before we take a look at the 3 players that were close to making the squad but didn't in the end. So yeah, starting with the players that have dropped out since last time, we have Kirkus, who I already talked about when it comes to Huijsen. It's just the fact that Huijsen has looked better in terms of underlying numbers since he came into the squad for Bournemouth, and he's cheaper than Kirkus. That's why I've preferred Huijsen now after looking more into the numbers. I was sort of like more enamored by Kirkus as like an offensive open play threat, but Dean Huijsen has that set piece threat that I talked about as well, so I prefer him slightly in that instance. Another Bournemouth player has dropped out in Dorgu at number 7, just down to the fact that Ivan Nilsson is back earlier than expected. I'm not quite sure if Dongo's going to continue playing as a striker. As soon as they got a red card in this past game against Wolves, he played more defensively, like further back in the pitch. I still think the minutes potential is decent for Dorgu, even with Ivan Nilsson back in the squad. I think he's going to be preferred on the wing. I think Kluivert, Semenyo, and Dorgu will still continue to play even after Evan Nilsson is back, if Evan Nilsson gets his place back as a striker. But I just don't feel confident enough about Dorgu long-term as a pick to have him in the squad anymore. So he has to drop out. He's still like a decent pick. I wouldn't be too scared about having him, especially for this game week when Evan Nilsson is not going to start. I think he's going to be a decent asset for like the next few game weeks at least, as Evan Nilsson is working his way back into full fitness. But once Evan Nilsson is back fully fit, I'm not quite sure about Dorgu. So long term, don't really like the potential, so that's why he's dropped out. Gabriel Magalhaes as well. Not too nice that they conceded against West Ham in terms of FPL points. Also, like the set piece threat has dried up a bit for Gabriel. He hasn't really been close to scoring either for a long time now. It seems like Arsenal's set pieces have sort of been found out a little bit. Like they haven't scored as many set pieces as they did earlier in the season. That could be helped once Saka gets back for game week 30. So from that point on, I think Gabriel could be back in the squad. But for now, I think there's just better options, cheaper options as well, to have in defense that are both good attacking wise and have decent clean sheet potential. And I don't think that's the case anymore as much as it has been previously in the season for Gabriel, who has been conceding a lot of goals, has been collecting a lot of 2-pointers and 1-pointers for quite a while now, with Arsenal struggling to have like a proper team out with so many injuries. So yeah, Gabriel has to drop out as well. Neco Williams, another player that I think is really good for the future. I was really close to having him over the likes of Ait-Nouri, for example, or Trent. It's like a cheap option. He could also be like a nice player to replace Trent with in Game Week 29. He has a really nice fixture in Game Week 29 against Ipswich. That could be good for Neco Williams. He is really cheap, plays for a really good defense in Nottingham Forest, or at least what we think is a good defense, because now recently as well, they have conceded a lot of goals, Nottingham Forest. 5 goals against Bournemouth, 4 goals against Newcastle now. They have conceded in like 6 out of the last 7 games, I think, defensively. So not quite as sold on Nottingham Forest defense anymore either. And I just think there's slightly better options in defense. But he is still 4.4 or 4.5 defender for a team that has been one of the best defenses in the league so far, playing as a wingback as well, or a fullback at least. So he's still decent value, but I just don't have quite as much faith in him as I did previously, with Nottingham Forest now looking slightly worse after that nice like 7-0 win over Brighton. They sort of came back down to earth again with the 4 goals conceded against Newcastle. So yeah, he's also dropped out since last time. And Mbeumo had that amazing haul against Leicester, but now that the fixtures are drying up a bit, he's not quite as nice of an option. I think I do prefer Bowen by quite a distance, because he has that Leicester fixture coming up. But in Mbeumo, we know how good he is. We know like the baseline for him as a penalty taker, set piece taker, playing for a pretty good offensive side in Brentford. He is still a really good asset. I don't think there's any reason to sell him if you're not on a wildcard. But if you are on a wildcard, I think there's just better options in the midfield. So yeah, he has dropped out as well. Dubravka dropped out from the starting squad for Newcastle as well, so he's not really a good option anymore. Pope didn't really look that good against Nottingham Forest, conceding 3 goals. But I'm just not trusting any Newcastle goalkeeper to start currently, so Dubravka has also dropped out. Joachim Andersen scored an own goal last time around. Also Fulham conceded twice at home in a game where I thought they were going to be better defensively. Palace were sort of all over them, so yeah, not quite as happy with Fulham either. After 2 pretty promising results in Game Week 24 and Game Week 25, they didn't look quite as good in Game Week 26. And I feel like there's better defensive assets. For example, Dorgu, who's his countryman from Denmark, I think is a better asset in terms of what we need going forward from the players. I think he just fits better, Dorgu, as like the stopgap in both Game 27 and Game 29 and Game 33, like I talked about with Dorgu. So Anderson has dropped out for that reason. And then for Bruggen was basically like a final player to have as like a goalkeeper to start in Game 29, where he played Man City, which is not really even that good. Brighton are looking better now currently, but I think for Henderson and Areola are a better goalkeeper duo than anything that Verbruggen can help with. So he has dropped out since last time as well. So those are all the players that have dropped out since last time. Then finally, we have the 3 players that are on the cusp. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but on the cusp is hyphenated this time around, on the cusp. And that's not going to be a permanent change. That's purely down to the players that I have on the cusp this week. As you'll see right now, 3 hyphenated players. Sort of cheated with the first one with Jean-Philippe Mateta. Would be Mateta usually, but I wanted to have a 3rd hyphenated name after adding Morgan Gibbs-White and Aaron Wan-Bissaka in that lineup of players that almost made the squad as well. So I can start with Wan-Bissaka actually. West Ham looked really defensively solid against Arsenal, and also Wan-Bissaka got really nicely forward as well, playing as a wingback now, right wingback. Seems like Scars on the left is going to be more defensively minded. Wan-Bissaka is going to have license to roam forward, and he's been really good going forward as well this season for West Ham. A lot of people, like Man United fans, said that he offers nothing going forward, but for West Ham fans, it has been nothing. That hasn't been the case at all. He's been West Ham's best player this season, both good defensively and offensively. So yeah, I think he has a really good chance to have a good end to the season. He's only 4.4, really cheap. But then again, it's West Ham. Can't really trust the West Ham defense, even after a nice defensive effort against Arsenal. We still need more time to see if they actually are legit defensively. But the fixture against Leicester, I would not be against anyone bringing in Wan-Bissaka this week, because I think he has really good potential for the rest of the season. He could be one of the best defenders to have in FPL for the rest of the season, but I'm not completely sold because I'm not really completely trusting West Ham yet. But yeah, Wan-Bissaka's looking pretty good. Then we have Gibbs-White, who is playing for Nottingham Forest. He's been really good. Chris Woodow's obviously the better Nottingham Forest assets. If you just look at them in terms of getting points, he's probably going to get more points than Gibbs-White. But at the same time, Chris Wood takes up one of the 3 really vital striker positions where I have so many good options. Isak, Cunha, Marmoush, Mateta, Haaland potentially. There are quite a few decent options in attack on top of Chris Wood, but when it comes to midfielders, I was really close to having Gibbs White over Kluivert because, yeah, he's nice to just bench for the next few game weeks and then start once they get better fixtures. And also game 29, he would be really nice to have Gibbs White, so he was really close to making the squad. But the fact that I have him and not Wood as one of the on-the-cusp players, it's just down to the fact that there are, like I said, more midfield options. You have 5 midfield places compared to 3 forward places. And I don't really think there's that many good midfielders either. Like even Neto is like a short-term pick. Kluivert, not entirely sold on him either. Bowen, really nice for this game week, but after that, maybe not as sold on him. Palmer even like has really good fixtures now, but like even after that, we're not really sure. Like I think there's like less super strong midfielders to have than forwards currently. So that's why I think Gibbs White is better than Wood. And I think Nottingham Forest, they've shown that they can score a lot of goals. Gibbs White has been really amongst the points as well lately. So I think he's a really good asset to have in general. Finally, the striker, Jean-Philippe Mateta. Obviously, if I was not on, if I had him in the squad, or if I was going to free hit in 29, I would bring in Mateta instantly because he's just in terrific form. He's in fantastic form, looking really, really nice all the time. Every time he plays, he has really good fixtures, as you can see from Muñoz, Aston Villa at home, Ipswich at home, Southampton away. Mateta could easily score in all those games. He could easily score a hat-trick in one of those games as well, because we've seen what he can do in the past. Like, he has really high ceiling. Just the one downside is the fact that he blanks in game 29. You could, like, just fuck it, go with Mateta as well and just have one less player in game 29. You could do that tactic as well, because I think he's a really good player. But like I said, there's so many good striker options that he just falls short when we need enough players to field an 11 in game 29. So that's why he's not in the squad, basically, in total. But yeah, that's it for the on the cusp section. Also, like a new thing that I'm going to do now, even though the videos are getting quite long, I'm going to also try to say whether I would wildcard or not this game week if I had to. Currently, I think wildcarding is not ideal. I think it's nice to have that either in game week 30, which I'm going to use myself after dead ending into game week 29, or use it in game week 34 to escape those players that are doubling in 33 that you want to play in game week 34. Or when you want the squad to play in game 34. So I don't think wildcarding is the best tactic currently, but I also think like this is a pretty strong team. I did go with this team on FPL.team and checked out the next few game weeks, and you can actually field a pretty good 11 for plenty of game weeks going forward. You can target City and Newcastle players from game week 30 or game week 29 in City's case, game week 30 in Newcastle's case as well, and have a pretty good strong squad for the end of the season and still have enough players. But yeah, I would do this tactic if that's the case, and free hit in 34, so you can just have a team from basically now until the end of the season that plays in game 29, has really good fixtures, potentially in game 30 to 33 if you bring in the Newcastle and City players, and then have a pretty strong team to end the season as well. So it is a pretty good place to be in, but I don't think, like, if you have like a pretty strong squad, I think you don't really, there's not really any reason to use the wildcard just yet. Obviously, if you have a good squad, if you have this squad already, there's no reason to wildcard. If you get like 2 or 3 changes from this squad, there's obviously no reason to change it. For me, this is like, I think I have like maybe like 4 or 5 players from this team already in my own team. But even still, I think it's better for me to just stick the course and not wildcard now, because I think it's going to be more valuable in the future. So yeah, probably wouldn't wildcard, but if your team is like complete shambles, or if you don't really feel like free hitting in 29, you don't really like your assets, or you just want to do something else, you want to change up your team because you've been doing badly lately and you want to just do something, then yeah, sure, go ahead with the wildcard, but I would advise to keep it for a little bit longer still. But yeah, those are my final thoughts on whether you should use the wildcard or not in this game week, after talking about what I think would be the best wildcard squad in game 27, which I do in the weekly wildcard draft series on this YouTube channel, basically. So with all that out of the way, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed these long videos. If you prefer them to be a bit shorter, I can try to be a bit more short form and like talk less about each individual player if you prefer that. So please let me know in the comments whether you like the long form format, or if you prefer it to be shorter, sort of have like a smaller like viewing base and then like the biggest FPL YouTubers out there. So it will be interesting to see from the people that actually watch me each week if you prefer it to be a longer sort of thing, or if you would like it to be like moving along faster. Like you see with me, I tend to babble on and just talk and talk and talk, and I don't really edit the videos either. And like, I prefer to just talk FPL because I just have so much FPL things in my brain going on, as you can see right now, and I'm rambling. So yeah, please let me know in the comments, like the video, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you for watching. As always, see you next time. Bye bye.